Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Cooler Talk with Rhonda and
Cynthia.
Cynthia. Yeah. No, I've not been drinking.
Was that a mistake?
This morning's topic is recovering from our mistakes,
That's right.
and just to give you a little starter here, if everyone makes mistakes, it's in our nature as humans to fail. And whether it's at work, your family life, or in your relationships, you're bound to disappoint yourself and others at some point. But for you to make progress in life, you must learn from your mistakes. You must learn to understand why you made a mistake or experienced failure and take corrective action. That's what successful people do. If you've ever done something only to regret it later, it doesn't mean you're doomed. You can learn how to make better choices. And Cynthia, I would love it if you would start.
Sure. Well, I think I'm going to start with a mistake that I made, gosh, probably about a year ago. A client that I was working with asked me we were working on this big project. There were a lot of moving parts. And he asked me to invite a senior partner from his company to attend a rehearsal so that we could get ready for a presentation. And I said, sure, no problem. I had no issues with it. And we went on with our calls. We were strategizing around ideas, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, a few weeks passed, and he reaches out to me on the day of one of our rehearsals, and he's like, Cynthia, did you ever get a chance to invite this person? And I realized in that moment that I got that email from him that I had flubbed massively. Um, I did not write it down as we were on that earlier call. I figured I would remember it. This is such an important project. And it completely fell through the tracks. A bunch of other things made its way to my to-do list, but not inviting this guy. And so that was a huge mistake. In fact, it's one of the kinds of mistakes that you really feel like you almost want to you almost want for anybody else to be responsible for making that mistake but you. And I looked. I really did. I was like, I can't believe I forgot that. That's not the sort of thing I would forget. So I did kind of like punish myself. I went through my notebook of notes, of to-do notes, and I looked back, and sure enough, on the day that I took all of those notes, I mean, we'd had lots of calls in between, but sure enough, on that day, that ask did not make it to my to-do list. And so what happened? It fell through the cracks. Um, so yeah, I actually see. I'll tell you a bit more about the story afterwards, but I think I want to sort of take a moment to pause and look at this topic of mistakes. What is a mistake really? And I did look it up because I'm a kind of a Wordsworth person. So I went and I looked in the dictionary, and I saw that a definition for it is an action or a decision that produces an incorrect or an unintended result, or an unintended result. And it got me to thinking that actually a mistake is an action, or in this case, an inaction in the present that's connected to a future vision or sort of like a past expectation. So, what I really should have done is, oh, great, thank you for posting that, Rhonda. What I really should have done was, been in the moment, when he asked me that and just sort of said, let's pause for 2 seconds while I write this in my notepad, instead of just kind of like looking forward to all of the things that need to be done and not being present. That's
Mhm,
basically the only thing that I can blame for myself for making that mistake.
mhm.
So, and I think that's critical, is kind of understanding that in order to live fulfilling lives, we should try to be as present as we can be in every moment. Yes, we will make mistakes, but when we do make mistakes, we can also acknowledge that, okay, in that moment, I was probably not as present as I would have liked to be. So, so that's kind of the first thing I wanted to address, but I don't want to go on for too long. Was there anything that you wanted to sort of jump in and say, Rhonda?
Well, I'm thinking what I have in mind is how we treat people, and what we say and what we do when we're around people are all choices.
Yeah,
Um,
I like that.
and we can't be attempting to hold other people responsible for the choices that we make.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't use an excuse, uh, make excuses about our own behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's just very simple. And when you learn, hopefully you don't make mistakes where you have to be trying to correct what you've done all the
Mm-hmm.
but understand why you make mistakes. And if you're being sincere and honest with people and being genuine about who you are and your motives and intentions, you don't you do usually don't make mistakes when you follow your heart and know in
Mm-hmm.
your heart that you're being you know demonstrating some level of kindness and empathy.
Yeah.
I think without I'm not I mean, I've made so many mistakes over my lifetime. It's hard to pinpoint one, but I think the one that stands out to me the most is how I treat other people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and how I've some of my biggest mistakes were not thinking something through and jumping
Mm-hmm.
in, being compulsive, um, and not thinking of the possible consequences. Um, I have a tendency to go with the flow, go with the moment. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but now I try to you know be a decent person about it.
Right. Well, I think that does speak to almost what I was referring to as well. I mean, you mentioned words like, being guided by your heart, really being authentic, and I do think there is a certain amount of presence required for that. And presence is a discipline. It's something that you have to sort of like
Mhm,
consistently return to. It's not something
mhm,
that happens automatically. And even airline pilots and Navy SEALs, they train for that level of presence so that
mhm,
they can minimize and reduce the mistakes that they can make, even as they're doing something that's routine, like a transatlantic flight, or something that's completely not routine. And so it's about really getting back into that space and
yeah.
getting into your like true sense of who you are.
We'll
And
talk about taking corrective action and doing it fast.
yes,
Those
yeah,
would be two careers and lifestyles where you've learned instinctively to know quickly, very quickly.
right,
Oh, uh-oh, and
yeah,
then shift gears as quickly as you can.
right,
It's an instantaneous thing, and I don't think it's something that we learn that we I don't think it's innate.
No.
I think we have to learn how to do this. And for example, well, for an example is it's okay to let someone know that they have treated you with derision.
Mhm.
They weren't respectful. And, just out of the blue, all of a sudden they're treating you. Um, and, and it's kind of a shocker when you want to talk to them about it, but all they want to do is turn it around and focus on you. What's
Mhm.
wrong
Mhm.
with you instead of and then but don't apologize and then turn around and repeat the behavior because that's an instant demonstration that your apology was not sincere.
Right. Well, so actually, you touch upon three things that I wanted to talk about in terms of recovering from a mistake, um,
Great.
and they just so happen to begin with A's, all of them. So the first thing is admitting that you made a mistake, admitting or acknowledging. I actually found one that was, I called it analyzing, but really you can also call it observing the mistake that you made and almost taking yourself or your emotion about that might surround those trigger words like failure or anger or trigger emotions and just analyze it cleanly. What did I do to create this problem? Like I did, I was like, or what didn't you do to create this problem? Which was write it down so that I'll remember when I go through my to-do list.
The
And
three A's again?
so the first is admit it or acknowledge it. The second is analyze it. What is the error? What is the actual error? And or the miscalculation, or there were a few words, or what was maybe like the insufficient knowledge, that gap of knowledge that maybe wasn't even there. And I tried to use those words because they don't necessarily make me the cause of it, if that could be a potential
Mhm.
emotional trigger for me. And the third A is apologize, which you actually mentioned a few times. But you can only apologize it when you can only authentically apologize when you really understand, what the error was and how it manifested into this troublesome situation.
So basically, you're saying admit you were wrong and
Yep.
promptly admit it.
Or yeah, admit that there's an error.
Mhm.
See if you're the cause of it, or see what is the cause of it. And I do want to separate the me from that error, because by removing your ego, it's
Yeah,
easier to
yeah.
maybe admit fault when it is me.
And then
Um,
you can genuinely look at someone and say, "What do I have to do to repair the damage I
yes,
caused?" And,
yes,
uh, and unless it's something that will cause harm, uh, be willing and do it, whatever
yes,
they say. If they sometimes it can be simple as just don't do it again,
yeah.
you know?
So to pick up on my story,
Yes.
he contacted me that morning.
Oh,
Um, I was on my way that morning that we were supposed to have this rehearsal with this high-ranking partner. And the funny thing is, I had invited a bunch of other people. This guy, though, just slid through the cracks. I don't know why. No, I do know why. And my heart rate went up when he sent me that email, like, "Hey, did this guy really not get invited? He didn't get anything. What happened?" My heart rate went up when I saw that, and I was like, "No, I mean, I remember you asking me for this. I remember telling you I would do this, but I don't remember inviting the guy. So what the heck?" And like I said, I went through my to-do booklet, and I noticed I did not write his name down. I did not write down that note. I wrote down a bunch of other things, all of which I've checked off, but that's the one thing that I did not. And sure enough. Anyway, so at the moment, as my heart rate went up, the first thing I did when I wrote him back, I was like, please let me look and see what happened. Oh, great mug. Please let me look, see what happened. I'll get back to you. And then, so I went back, I looked at my stuff, I noticed I was the reason for the error. I caused the error. So what did I do? I called him. I picked up the phone and I was like, I screwed up big time. And he was, upset, clearly. And I said, all I can say at this point is I just forgot. It slipped my mind. It never made it to my to-do list. And so it never got done. And I said, all I can do is maybe try to call this guy and find out if he might have time when we're rehearsing with all of these other folks, and whether he would be willing to come in and be like a challenge partner. And he's like, yeah, okay, yeah, go ahead and do that. But we both believed like there's a snowball's chance in hell that he'll have availability in his calendar. Anyway, I called him and I came right out and I admitted that like I screwed up. So I was calling on, my partner's behalf. And I said, I'm calling to invite you to be a challenging partner in this rehearsal at this time today. And he was like, to when? Today. And he's like, are you not familiar with my packed schedule? And I was like, I'm very familiar with your packed schedule, but this is the only way, like I have to, at the very least, own the humiliation of you blaming me for not giving you ample notice, because I did know about that. I should have invited you a month ago. Anyway, he was like, well, this is a really important opportunity for us. Let me see what I can do with my schedule and I'll try to make it. He did manage to shuffle around his schedule. And I have to tell you, like, this guy is not, part of the rank and file with this company. And I very much was. I mean, I was a freelancer, so I wasn't even part of the company. And what a big magnanimous individual to do that. Mm-hmm. And so I could go back and save face with my partner and call him and say, I think he's going to show. I think he's going to try, because this is very important to him and he wants you to know that. And the only reason why he didn't know about it before, it's all my fault. Anyway, later on that day, he did show up, and he did help give some tips and everything. And then he had to leave early to go on to his next other meetings that he had known about for a long time. And then at the very end of the day, as I'm cleaning up everything, the partner that I was working with said, Cynthia, I actually approached him first thing and I said, I just want to apologize one final time for slipping up. I know what happened. I don't know how it happened, except that I was careless. I just didn't write it up, but I'm really sorry. And it was just funny because I could see how apologizing, and this was a huge learning moment for me about the power of a heartfelt apology. Mm. I could see how like the weight and the burden of maybe taking on the responsibility of my slip ups. He was actually bearing the responsibility of my slip up. Oh. For that whole day, or when he realized that this person wasn't invited. And it was only when I apologized that like I helped him to release that burden, that he could really honestly say, oh, this really wasn't my fault. You know, this was an honest, innocent mistake, and I don't have to own it. And she has, you know, unburdened herself, and she did all the best she could to fix it. And I realized at that point how important a, a heartfelt apology is.
Well,
Um,
it tells you something about the person that you apologize to also,
yes,
because his response spoke volumes about integrity, his
yeah,
personal integrity,
yeah,
and who he was and the
yeah,
kind of person he was. So,
yeah,
one of my uh, something I've learned over the years is that don't beat yourself up if the other person doesn't accept your apology
yeah,
and is not willing to allow you to repair the damage.
yeah,
If it's okay to walk away from that situation.
yeah,
It's okay to walk away and say, "I did my best to make
correct.
up for my screw up," but they were
Mhm.
not willing to accept it. And
Yes.
so, your first one about, acceptance. Um, yeah, I accepted that I made a mistake, but I have to accept that I can't expect the other person's response.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
That, that I don't know how they're going to respond, but
Nope.
if they do respond negatively, I have to accept it, and then I have to move on,
Yep.
just like they are going to do.
And you know, we all it's really interesting how like we're all interconnected in our
Yeah,
lives. We all have like an impact on everybody, even, you know, through 6 degrees or X degrees of separation. We all have like yeah, an impact on all of the individuals that we connect with
mhm,
directly and even
yeah,
indirectly. But
absolutely.
by the same token, we are all individuals and we all
Mhm.
have our individual lives to lead. And our responsibility to ourselves is to lead it as authentically and as heart driven as we can.
Mhm.
Um, and knowing with that intentionality, being able to be the integral beings that we are.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And a big danger is expecting results.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to do something nice and good for people,
Yeah.
and you want to do these good things, do it from your heart without expectation of something in return.
Yes. Yeah.
Because, think about it. If you're doing these nice things with an expectation to do something, get something back,
Yeah.
then how sincere are your efforts
Mhm.
to do
Mhm.
good? I mean,
Mhm.
that's how I feel. Uh, and but we through these situations we learn about not only ourselves but
Yeah.
other people too, and
Yes.
we learn who we want to move forward in life with in this life
Yes.
path.
Yes.
So
Yes.
maybe they were just there for a particular purpose,
Yeah.
and and maybe they were, maybe they weren't. But
Mhm.
you can tell a lot about people by their willingness to work things out.
Yep.
I
And
that's how I see it. That's how I feel. And the that also, if you're not willing, I mean, I think about oh God, I think about this fella I dated in college.
uh-huh.
Okay, and he was just the nicest guy. However, I was starting to pick up on some things that I'm like, I don't think I'm going to be able to depend on him because we
Uh-huh.
were talking about getting married. I don't think I'm going to be able to depend on him in a crisis.
Uh-huh.
I don't think he's going to be there.
Right.
Um, and that's, through these experiences, that's how we learn about ourselves and other
Mhm.
people. And I'm really
Mhm.
glad that I picked up on that. Um, And and I had to accept the fact that no, this person's not going to move forward in my life with me. I know they're very wonderful person, but I
Yeah,
don't think I'm going to be able to depend on him.
yeah, yeah,
But then we have to remember to turn around and say, okay, now I need to be a dependable person too. And
yeah.
so
Well,
we can't just say we just can't look at other people because in some ways these might be projections of what's going on in us too. And yes, I went
totally.
through many years where I was not dependable at all. I'd say I'd be somewhere and I wouldn't show up. And fortunately I've corrected that action. I've been able to do some inside work to find out why am I doing this.
Yeah,
And I was able to come to terms with it. But it's all part of life. It's all part of growing. It's all part of moving forward and becoming a better person, I believe, in work, play, and at home.
yes. And actually, I think we're actually about to wrap up the show, but I love the way that you talked about the mistakes that you make with other people. And I think a lot of the mistakes that we really learn from do happen to be those kinds of errors where, um, we might be looking outside of ourselves more than we could be looking inside of ourselves
Yeah,
and
for
working on
sure.
ourselves.
Mhm.
But by the same token, some of those mistakes can also just be with inanimate ideas, right? Like a career choice or
Mhm.
or it could be maybe even smaller, like
Mhm.
as a course choice or a choice in major where, after a month in, you're like, this is not the direction I'm going to take for the rest of my life.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
but all opportunities to really, admit that you've made a mistake, own it, analyze it for corrective measures that you can take, and then, apologize, which could include apologizing to yourself.
And
And
apologizing isn't saying, "I'm sorry."
yeah, yeah.
Oh
And
god, don't say
definitely
that.
not with the eye roll. If you're
Oh,
gonna roll
yeah.
your eyes while you say I'm sorry, then
Oh, don't say that, "I'm sorry" to me. It's just like, oh, never mind. I won't go
yeah,
there because we don't have time.
I'm sorry, but I'm
Oh,
sorry, but
sorry. Oh, that I love your summary. Thank you so much, and thank you for joining us for recovering from our mistakes and cooler talk with Rhonda and Cynthia. Feel free to give us your feedback in the comments. We'd love it if you liked it enough to share. Please do if you think it'll help somebody. That's what we're here for. We're just here to share our experience in life and how things how things have rolled with us and how we found solutions and for us how it's helped us move on as better ladies.
every day, baby
Yeah.
steps. Maybe the show should be called Baby Steps with Cynthia.
Yeah, boy, life is a big baby step, let me tell you. Oh my god. Well, anyway, thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next week. Bye bye.